You've felt it, haven't you? That strange tension in the room when you speak your truth, that uncomfortable silence when you refuse to play along with the charade, that subtle hostility when you simply choose to be yourself. You're not imagining it. It's real, and it's happening because you've stumbled upon one of life's most uncomfortable truths. Fake people absolutely cannot stand authentic ones. Right now, as you're listening to this, there's someone in your life who feels threatened by you, not because you've done anything wrong, not because you're trying to hurt them, but simply because you exist in a way that makes them deeply uncomfortable. You're a mirror they don't want to look into. You're a question they don't want to answer. You're living proof that the game they're playing isn't the only option. Think about the last time someone got defensive with you for no apparent reason. Remember that colleague who suddenly turned cold when you started speaking more honestly in meetings? What about that friend who distanced themselves right after you stopped pretending to enjoy things you didn't? These weren't random events. These were reactions to your authenticity. And here's what you need to understand. Their discomfort has absolutely nothing to do with you, and everything to do with the prison they've built for themselves. You see, fake people live in a constant state of performance. Every word is calculated. Every gesture is measured. Every emotion is filtered through a lens of, how will this make me look? They've spent years, maybe decades, constructing an elaborate facade. They've memorized their lines. They've perfected their mask. They've become so good at the act that they've forgotten there was ever a real person underneath. And then you come along just being yourself, and suddenly their entire performance feels exhausting. Your authenticity is like a spotlight that illuminates the darkness they've been hiding in. When you speak without rehearsing, they're reminded of all the times they bit their tongue. When you laugh genuinely, they're confronted with how often they fake their own laughter. When you admit you don't know something, they're forced to face all the times they pretended to have answers they didn't have. You're not trying to expose them. You're not even thinking about them. But your mere existence does something they can't tolerate. It makes them question their own choices. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people you meet are not living authentic lives. They're living approved lives. Lives designed by committee. Lives edited for public consumption. Lives optimized for likes and validation. They've traded their truth for acceptance, their uniqueness for belonging, their soul for safety. And somewhere along the way, they convinced themselves this was wisdom. They called it maturity. They labeled it being professional, or appropriate, or realistic. But deep down, in the quiet moments they try to avoid, they know it's none of those things. It's fear. Pure, simple, suffocating fear. And you? You're the embodiment of what they're most afraid of. You're proof that you can survive without the mask. You're evidence that authenticity won't kill you. You're living testimony that speaking your truth, making your own choices, and being genuinely yourself is not only possible, but liberating. And this terrifies them. Because if you can do it, then they could have done it too. If you're okay without constant approval, then maybe they didn't need to sacrifice so much for it. If you're fine being misunderstood, then perhaps they wasted years trying to be understood by people who never really mattered. This audiobook isn't just about understanding why fake people react the way they do. It's about something far more important. Understanding yourself. Understanding why you chose authenticity in a world that rewards fakeness. Understanding the power you hold simply by refusing to play games you never wanted to play. Understanding that their discomfort is not your problem to solve. You didn't break anything. You're not doing anything wrong. You're simply reminding them of everything they gave up, and that's a mirror most people cannot bear to look into. Over the next hours, we're going to explore every dimension of this dynamic. We're going to understand the psychology of fake people, the power of authenticity, and most importantly, how you navigate a world where being real makes you the outsider. You're going to learn why your honesty feels like an attack to them, why your confidence threatens their control, and why your peace disturbs their chaos. But more than that, you're going to learn how to thrive in your authenticity without apologizing for it, without dimming your light, and without ever again questioning whether you should go back to being someone you're not. Because here's what they won't tell you. The discomfort you cause by being authentic is the price of freedom, and it's a price you're already paying. The question isn't whether to be authentic or fake. You've already made that choice. The question is whether you'll own that choice with confidence or let their reactions make you doubt yourself. The question is whether you'll understand their hostility for what it really is or internalize it as evidence that something's wrong with you. The question is whether you'll continue growing in your truth or shrink back into a comfortable lie just to make others feel better about their own compromises. You're about to discover why fake people can't stand you. But more importantly, you're about to discover why that's the greatest compliment they could ever give you. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Mask They Wear. You need to understand something fundamental about fake people. They're not evil. They're not plotting against you in some grand conspiracy. Most of them aren't even consciously aware of what they're doing. They're simply living the only way they know how. They're survivors of a system that taught them early on that who they really are isn't good enough, safe enough, or acceptable enough. So they adapted, they learned, they became something else. And over time, that something else became all they knew. Picture a child who learns that showing excitement gets them labeled as too much. A teenager who discovers that expressing opinions gets them excluded from the group. A young adult who realizes that admitting vulnerability is seen as weakness in their workplace. What do these people do? They adjust. They modify. They create a version of themselves that fits the requirements. They put on a mask, and at first it feels temporary. It feels like a strategy, a tool, something they can take off when they get home. But masks have a funny way of becoming permanent. You've probably noticed this. There are people in your life who have no idea who they really are anymore. Ask them what they genuinely think about something, and they'll tell you what they're supposed to think. Ask them what they want, and they'll list what they should want. Ask them how they feel, and they'll perform the emotion they believe is appropriate. They've been wearing their mask for so long that it's fused to their face. They can't remember what they look like underneath. They're terrified to find out. This is where you come in, being unapologetically yourself. When you walk into a room and speak your actual thoughts, something happens in their psychology. You're demonstrating that the mask is optional. You're proving that survival doesn't require constant performance. You're showing them that they made a choice they didn't have to make. And this revelation doesn't make them grateful. It makes them angry. Because nobody wants to realize they've been suffering unnecessarily. Think about how much energy it takes to maintain a false identity. You have to remember which version of yourself you showed to which person. You have to keep track of your lies, your exaggerations, your carefully constructed stories. You have to monitor every word before it leaves your mouth, filtering it through multiple layers of "will this make me look good?" You have to suppress your real reactions and manufacture acceptable ones. You have to pretend to care about things that bore you and pretend not to care about things that matter to you. It's exhausting. It's a full-time job with no vacation, no breaks, and no retirement plan. And then you show up not doing any of that. You're just existing, speaking when you have something to say, being quiet when you don't, admitting when you're wrong, acknowledging when you don't know, expressing what you actually feel instead of what you think you should feel. And to them, this looks like magic. It looks like privilege. It looks like something they could never have. But here's what they don't realize. You're not special. You're not blessed with some unique ability. You simply made a different choice. You decided that being yourself was worth more than being liked by everyone. And that choice is available to anyone, including them. But choosing it would mean admitting they didn't have to suffer all these years. It would mean facing the painful truth that they gave up their authenticity for nothing. So instead of learning from you, they resent you. Instead of being inspired by your freedom, they're threatened by it. Instead of celebrating your courage, they call it arrogance. Instead of admiring your honesty, they label it as rudeness. They reframe your strength as their victimization. They paint your authenticity as an attack on their performance. Because if they can make you the problem, they don't have to face the actual problem themselves. You've probably heard them say things like, "Not everyone can just say whatever they want," or "Some of us have responsibilities," or "It must be nice to not care what people think." These statements sound like observations, but they're actually accusations. They're implying that your authenticity is somehow irresponsible, immature, or selfish. They're suggesting that the real adults in the room have moved beyond such luxuries as being genuine. They're trying to make their prison sound like wisdom, and your freedom sound like foolishness. But here's what you know that they don't. Caring what people think and being authentic aren't opposites. You can be deeply considerate of others while still being genuinely yourself. You can be responsible, mature, and professional without sacrificing your core identity. The idea that authenticity requires you to be reckless or selfish is a lie they tell themselves to justify their own choices. It's a false dichotomy designed to make their suffering seem noble and your freedom seem naive. Watch what happens when you refuse to engage with their narrative. When someone implies you're being inappropriate by speaking honestly, and you simply smile and continue being honest. When they suggest you're making things difficult by not playing along, and you calmly maintain your boundaries. When they try to shame you for not wearing a mask, and you refuse to feel ashamed. Their frustration intensifies because you're not following the script. You're supposed to defend yourself, prove you're not what they're accusing you of, or better yet, adjust your behavior to make them comfortable. But you're doing none of those things. You're just existing in your truth, completely unbothered by their discomfort. And that unbotheredness is what drives them crazy. The mask they wear isn't just about hiding who they are. It's about controlling how others see them. It's about managing perceptions, curating impressions, and engineering outcomes. When you're authentic, you're completely uninterested in this game. You're not trying to control anyone's perception of you. You're not managing impressions. You're not engineering outcomes. You're simply being and letting the chips fall where they may. This approach is incomprehensible to them. It's like you're speaking a language they don't understand. And what we don't understand, we fear. What we fear, we often attack. Here's something you need to remember. Their mask is their security blanket. It's the thing that's gotten them through life. It's protected them from rejection, from judgment, from being truly seen. And you're asking them, simply by example, to give it up. You're suggesting through your existence that safety isn't worth the price they're paying. You're implying, without saying a word, that the protection their mask provides isn't really protection at all. It's isolation. It's imprisonment. It's slow suffocation dressed up as wisdom. And nobody wants to hear that the thing they've sacrificed everything to maintain is actually the source of their misery. So they double down. They polish their mask until it shines. They perfect their performance until it's flawless. They become even more fake, even more calculated, even more controlled. And they look at you with a mixture of envy, confusion, and contempt, because you're doing the one thing they told themselves was impossible. You're being real and surviving. You're being authentic and thriving. You're refusing to play the game, and somehow, inexplicably, you're okay. You're more than okay. You're free. And freedom is the one thing their mask can never give them, no matter how perfectly they wear it. Chapter 2. The Threat of Your Honesty. Your honesty isn't just uncomfortable for fake people. It's destabilizing. It threatens the entire ecosystem they've created. Because in a world where everyone is lying, the truth teller becomes the enemy. Not because the truth is harmful, but because it exposes the lies everyone else has agreed to accept. You're breaking an unspoken contract, violating an invisible rule, disrupting a delicate balance, and for that, you will be punished. Let's talk about what happens when you tell the truth in a room full of people who've agreed not to. Imagine a workplace where everyone pretends to love a project that's clearly failing. The meetings are full of enthusiastic nodding, supportive comments, and artificial optimism. Everyone knows it's a disaster. Everyone can see the problems. But no one says anything because that's not how the game is played. You're supposed to smile, agree, and let leadership figure it out on their own. And then you speak up. You point out the obvious issues. You articulate what everyone's thinking, but no one's saying. You tell the truth. What happens next isn't gratitude. It's not relief that someone finally said it. It's hostility. Suddenly you're the problem. You're negative. You're not a team player. You're making things difficult. You're being unprofessional. The very people who were just thinking the exact same thing you said will now distance themselves from you. They'll deny they ever had those concerns. They'll pretend your observation is shocking and unwarranted. They'll throw you under the bus to protect their position in the game. Because you did something unforgivable. You told the truth when everyone agreed to lie. This is what fake people do. They create collective fictions and then punish anyone who doesn't participate. They build houses of cards and then attack anyone who points out there's a breeze. They live in elaborate delusions and then exile anyone who suggests reality might be different. Your honesty isn't welcome because it threatens the comfort of the lie. And for people who've invested everything in that lie, Your truth feels like an attack. You need to understand the psychology here. When fake people hear your honest opinion, they don't just disagree with the content. They're offended by the very act of honesty itself, because your willingness to speak truth implies that truth matters more than harmony. It suggests that reality matters more than feelings. It demonstrates that authenticity matters more than approval. And every single one of these implications is an indictment of how they've chosen to live their lives. They've spent years prioritizing harmony over truth. They've sacrificed honesty on the altar of keeping everyone comfortable. They've learned to smile through their disagreement, nod through their confusion, and agree through their opposition. They've trained themselves to swallow their real thoughts and regurgitate approved opinions. And they've told themselves this is maturity. This is wisdom. This is how adults navigate the world. And then you come along and prove them wrong. You show them that you can be honest without being cruel. You can disagree without being disagreeable. You can speak truth without destroying relationships. And this revelation is intolerable. Think about the last time someone called you too honest or said, "You can't just say things like that." What they were really saying is, "You're making me uncomfortable by refusing to lie." They were admitting that they expect dishonesty as the baseline and your honesty feels like a violation. They're so accustomed to social lubrication through small lies that your straightforward truth feels abrasive. They've normalized deception to such a degree that authenticity seems aggressive. This is where you'll notice something interesting. Fake people will often accuse you of the very thing they're guilty of. They'll say you're being manipulative when you're being direct. They'll claim you're playing games when you're the only one not playing. They'll suggest you have hidden motives when you're the most transparent person in the room. This isn't random. It's projection. They assume everyone operates with the same level of deception they do. They can't imagine someone actually saying what they mean and meaning what they say. So they look for the angle, search for the hidden agenda, and when they can't find it, they invent one. Your honesty also does something particularly threatening. It creates accountability. When you speak truthfully about a situation, you make it harder for others to deny reality. When you name what everyone else is tiptoeing around, you force people to either agree or explicitly defend a lie. You remove the comfortable ambiguity that fake people hide in. You eliminate the plausible deniability they rely on. You make it impossible to pretend things are fine when they're not, and this makes you a liability in their eyes. Consider how many social and professional situations depend on everyone agreeing to ignore the obvious. The Emperor's New Clothes isn't just a fairy tale. It's a documentary about how human social dynamics actually work. Everyone can see the Emperor is naked, but everyone agrees to pretend otherwise because to speak the truth would be to break social cohesion. The person who points out the obvious isn't celebrated for their clarity. They're ostracized for their lack of discretion, because the goal isn't truth. The goal is maintaining the comfortable lie that protects everyone's position. You've probably experienced this in relationships too. You're with someone who's clearly unhappy, but insists everything's fine. You can see the cracks forming, but they smile and deny any problems. You know something's wrong, but they gaslight you into questioning your own perception. And when you finally say, "I think we need to talk about what's really happening here," they explode. Not because you're wrong, but because you're right. You've pierced through their carefully maintained fiction. You've refused to participate in the shared delusion. You've chosen truth over comfort, and for that, you're the bad guy. Here's what makes your honesty particularly threatening. It's consistent. Fake people can handle occasional truth when it's unavoidable. What they can't handle is someone who makes honesty their default mode, because that level of consistency means they can never relax around you. They can't play their usual games. They can't test their manipulations. They can't hide behind social niceties. They have to actually be real or actively avoid you. And since being real terrifies them, they choose avoidance, or worse, sabotage. You'll notice fake people trying to discredit your honesty by attacking your motives. You just like to stir up drama. You enjoy making people uncomfortable. You think you're better than everyone else. These accusations serve a dual purpose. First, they're trying to make you doubt yourself, to convince you that maybe your honesty is actually a character flaw. Second, they're warning others not to trust you, painting you as a troublemaker so your honest observations will be dismissed. It's a preemptive strike against truth. If they can make you the problem, they don't have to address the problems you're pointing out. But here's what you need to understand. Your honesty isn't the problem. Their inability to handle it is. Your truth-telling isn't cruel. Their addiction to comfortable lies has made them allergic to reality. Your straightforwardness isn't aggressive. Their excessive indirectness has made them forget what normal communication looks like. You're not doing anything wrong. You're simply refusing to participate in a game you never agreed to play. And in a world full of players, that makes you dangerous. The most powerful thing about your honesty is that it's not strategic. You're not telling the truth to win points or gain advantage. You're not being authentic to manipulate outcomes. You're honest because that's who you are. It's your default setting. It's how you navigate the world. And this pure, unmotivated authenticity is what fake people find most incomprehensible. They literally cannot understand someone who isn't playing chess with every word, who isn't calculating outcomes with every statement, who isn't managing perceptions with every interaction. To them, you're either naive or lying about being authentic, because in their world, nobody is genuinely that straightforward. So they keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. They keep expecting you to reveal your true agenda. They keep looking for the moment when your mask slips and you show yourself to be just as fake as they are. And when that moment never comes, when you remain consistently authentic, it actually makes them more suspicious and more hostile, because you're proving that their entire worldview is wrong. You're demonstrating that authenticity isn't a luxury or a phase or a naive mistake. It's a viable way of living. And that possibility is more threatening than anything you could ever say. Chapter 3, Your confidence exposes their insecurity. There's something about confidence that fake people find absolutely unbearable. Not arrogance, not bravado, not showing off, but genuine, quiet, unshakable confidence. The kind that doesn't need validation. The kind that doesn't require approval. The kind that exists independent of other people's opinions. When you walk into a room with that kind of confidence, fake people can smell it, and it makes them immediately uncomfortable. You know the confidence I'm talking about. It's in the way you can sit in silence without feeling the need to fill it. It's in how you can disagree without becoming defensive. It's in your ability to receive criticism without crumbling or attacking back. It's in how you make choices based on what's right for you, not what will make you look good. It's in your willingness to be misunderstood rather than fake understood. This confidence doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. It simply is, and that's exactly what makes it so threatening. Fake people have built their entire identity on external validation. Every decision they make is filtered through the question, what will people think? Every action is calculated for maximum approval. Every word is chosen to create the right impression. They're like plants that can only survive on the constant sunshine of other people's praise. Take that away, and they wither. They literally don't know who they are without external feedback telling them. And then they meet you, someone who seems to generate their own light from within, and it breaks their brain. Your confidence reveals something they've spent their whole life denying. You don't actually need other people's approval to feel good about yourself. You can make a decision, have people disagree with it, and be completely okay. You can be criticized, hear it without internalizing it, and move on with your day. You can be excluded from a group and not feel less worthy. You can be misunderstood and not desperately try to explain yourself. This level of self-sufficiency is foreign to them. It's like watching someone breathe underwater. It shouldn't be possible, but you're doing it anyway. Watch what happens when you don't react the way fake people expect. They make a subtle dig at you, expecting you to either defend yourself or shrink. You just smile and keep going. They exclude you from something, expecting you to beg for inclusion. You don't even seem to notice or care. They try to make you feel inferior, expecting insecurity to surface. You remain completely centered. Their manipulations don't land because you're not operating from a place of need. You don't need them to validate you, include you, or approve of you. And this makes you impossible to control. Control is everything to fake people. Their entire social strategy is built on the ability to make others feel insecure, then position themselves as the solution to that insecurity. They point out your flaws so you'll seek their approval. They create doubt so you'll look to them for certainty. They generate anxiety so you'll crave their acceptance. It's a systematic process of creating dependency. But you can't make a confident person dependent. You can't create need in someone who's already complete. You can't manipulate someone who doesn't require your validation. And this makes you a problem. You've probably noticed fake people trying to shake your confidence. They'll make comments designed to introduce doubt. Are you sure about that? That's an interesting choice. I would never do it that way, but okay. These statements aren't questions or observations. They're attacks. They're attempting to plant seeds of insecurity, hoping they'll grow into full-blown self-doubt. They want you to second-guess yourself. They want you to become uncertain. They want you to need reassurance. Because once you need reassurance, they can control whether you get it. But here's what frustrates them. You don't take the bait. Someone questions your decision, and instead of defending it or doubting yourself, you simply acknowledge their perspective and remain secure in your choice. Someone criticizes your approach, and instead of getting defensive or changing course to please them, you consider if there's value in the feedback and either integrate it or dismiss it based on your own judgment. You're evaluating input without being destabilized by it. You're considering perspectives without being controlled by them. And this level of sovereignty drives fake people absolutely insane. Your confidence also does something particularly threatening. It highlights their insecurity. When you're in a room not seeking approval, everyone who is seeking approval suddenly feels exposed. When you're okay with being disliked, everyone who needs to be liked feels inadequate. When you're comfortable in silence, everyone who needs constant validation feels their neediness on display. You're not doing anything to them. You're just existing in your confidence. But your existence makes their insecurity impossible to ignore. Think about group dynamics. In most groups, there is an unspoken agreement that everyone needs everyone else. Everyone's seeking approval. Everyone's performing for validation. Everyone's measuring their worth by the group's response. It's a codependent ecosystem where everyone's insecurity feeds everyone else's sense of importance. Then you join the group, and you're just not participating in that dynamic. You're contributing, you're present, but you're not needy. You're not seeking validation. You're not performing for approval. And suddenly the whole system feels off balance. Fake people will try to pull you into their insecurity. They'll share their anxieties, hoping you'll reciprocate with yours. They'll fish for compliments, expecting you to fish for them in return. They'll seek reassurance, anticipating you'll need it too. And when you don't play along, when you remain secure while they expose their insecurity, they feel foolish. They feel like they revealed too much. They feel like you now have power over them. So they resent you for their own vulnerability. They blame you for their own choice to be needy. And they'll punish you for witnessing their weakness. Here's something crucial to understand. Your confidence isn't diminished by their attempts to shake it. In fact, every failed attempt to make you insecure actually strengthens your position, because you're proving over and over that you can't be manipulated through insecurity. You're demonstrating that your self-worth isn't negotiable. You're showing that confidence isn't something they can give or take away. It's something you generate from within. And this is the most threatening revelation of all. You'll notice fake people often try to reframe your confidence as arrogance. This is a defensive move. If they can make your confidence seem like a flaw, they can justify their own insecurity as humility. If they can paint your self-assurance as cockiness, they can position their constant doubt as wisdom. If they can label your security as self-absorption, they can call their neediness being considerate. It's all reframing designed to make their weakness look like strength, and your strength look like weakness. But you know the difference. Real confidence is quiet. It doesn't need to announce itself or defend itself or prove itself. It simply exists. It's comfortable being questioned because it's not dependent on being believed. It's okay being challenged because it's not threatened by opposition. It's fine being misunderstood because it's not desperate to be seen correctly. This kind of confidence doesn't come from thinking you're better than others. It comes from knowing you don't need to be better than others. You're just yourself, and that's enough. Fake people, on the other hand, have pseudo-confidence. It's loud. It's defensive. It needs constant reinforcement. It falls apart under questioning. It requires everyone else to believe in it for it to exist. It's not confidence at all. It's insecurity wearing a costume. And when real confidence walks into the room, the costume becomes obvious. The performance becomes visible. The fake becomes undeniable. And that's why they can't stand you. You're the X-ray that shows everyone the emperor's new clothes were never there. And nobody appreciates being exposed like that, especially people who've built their entire identity on the illusion. Chapter 4. The envy they'll never admit. Underneath all the hostility, all the subtle digs, all the attempts to undermine you, there's something fake people will never admit. They're jealous. Deeply, painfully, consumingly jealous. Not of your possessions or your achievements or your status. Those things they can understand. Those things they can compete with. They're jealous of something far more fundamental. They're jealous of your freedom. They're jealous that you got out. They're jealous that you figured out how to be yourself in a world that demands conformity. And that jealousy eats at them every single day. You have something they want but can't have. Not because it's unavailable to them, but because obtaining it would require admitting they wasted years of their life playing a game they didn't need to play. It would mean acknowledging that all their sacrifices, all their compromises, all their self-betrayals were unnecessary. It would mean facing the painful truth that they chose their prison and they're still holding the key. That's a level of self-awareness most people can't handle. So instead of pursuing what you have, they resent you for having it. Think about what your life looks like from their perspective. You're not constantly performing. You're not endlessly calculating. You're not perpetually anxious about what others think. You wake up and you're just yourself. You interact with people as yourself. You make decisions as yourself. You go to bed as yourself. There's no exhausting translation between who you are and who you present. There's no mental gymnastics required to remember which version of yourself you showed to which person. There's no crushing weight of maintaining a false image. You're just living. And to them, that looks like paradise. But here's the kicker. They can't admit they want what you have because that would mean admitting what they're doing isn't working. It would mean confronting the fact that their strategy of people-pleasing, image management, and constant performance hasn't actually made them happy. It would mean acknowledging that all the approval they've gotten hasn't filled the void inside them. It would mean recognizing that they've been running on a hamster wheel, exhausting themselves going nowhere, and that admission is too painful. So they turn their pain into anger, and they direct that anger at you. You've probably heard them say things like it must be nice to not care what people think, with a tone that's half admiration, half accusation. They're expressing envy while simultaneously framing your freedom as a character flaw. They're acknowledging what they want while explaining why they can't have it. They're complimenting you and insulting you in the same breath. This linguistic gymnastics is how they cope with wanting something they've convinced themselves they can't pursue. Watch what happens when good things come to you. When you get a promotion, when you form a genuine connection, when you succeed at something, when you're simply happy. Fake people won't celebrate with you. They'll find ways to diminish it. Well, you didn't have to deal with X like I did. Must be nice to have Y helping you. I could do that too if I had Z. They're constantly finding reasons why your success doesn't count, why your happiness isn't valid, why your achievements aren't impressive. Because if your success is legitimate, it means their lack of success might be their own fault. If your happiness is real, it means their misery might be a choice. If your achievements matter, it means they could have achieved similar things if they'd made different choices. This is why fake people often try to complicate things you make look simple. You handle a conflict with direct communication, and they'll insist conflict is never that straightforward. You maintain a boundary with ease, and they'll claim boundaries always damage relationships. You succeed by being authentic, and they'll argue authenticity only works in certain circumstances. They need your approach to be difficult, complex, or situational. Because if it's simple, if it's available to anyone, if it just requires courage, then they have no excuse for not doing it themselves. The envy intensifies when they see you experiencing things they've told themselves weren't possible. You're being yourself, and people still like you. You're setting boundaries, and people still respect you. You're prioritizing your own needs, and people don't abandon you. Every positive outcome you experience while being authentic destroys another one of their justifications for being fake. They told themselves they had to lie to be liked. You're proving that's false. They convinced themselves they had to perform to be valued. You're demonstrating otherwise. They believed they had to sacrifice themselves to maintain relationships. You're showing a different path. And each proof invalidates their entire life strategy. Here's something you need to understand. Their envy isn't really about you. It's about them. It's about their regret. It's about their awareness, however buried, that they could have lived differently. Every time they see you, they're confronted with the path they didn't take. You're the embodiment of the choice they didn't make. You're living proof of the life they could have had. And instead of inspiring them to change, you remind them of everything they've given up. That's not your fault. That's not your problem, but it is your reality when dealing with fake people. You might wonder why they don't just learn from you. Why don't they see your example and decide to become more authentic? Because change requires admitting you were wrong. It requires accepting that all those years of fakeness were wasted. It requires facing the pain of recognition that you hurt yourself unnecessarily. Most people aren't capable of that level of honesty with themselves. It's easier to tear you down than to build themselves up. It's simpler to discredit your approach than to adopt it. It's less painful to make you the villain than to face their own choices as the source of their misery. This is why fake people will often try to sabotage your success. Not obviously, not overtly, but subtly they'll forget to include you. They'll share information with everyone except you. They'll subtly undermine your ideas in meetings. They'll damn you with faint praise. They'll create obstacles while appearing helpful. They can't stand watching you succeed while being authentic, because your success is a daily reminder of their failure to be themselves. So they'll try to level the playing field, not by rising to your level, but by dragging you down to theirs. You've probably experienced this. Sharing an accomplishment with someone, and instead of congratulating you, they immediately start talking about their own achievements. Or worse, they point out something negative about your success. You got a new job? They mention how unstable that industry is. You're in a new relationship? They bring up divorce statistics. You achieved a goal? They remind you of all the things you haven't achieved yet. They literally cannot let you have a moment of pure joy because your joy highlights their joylessness. Your win emphasizes their losses. Your authentic success exposes their inauthentic struggles. The most painful part of their envy is that deep down, they know you're not lucky. They know you're not blessed with some special circumstance they lack. They know you simply made different choices. You chose discomfort over dishonesty. You chose authenticity over approval. You chose freedom over fitting in. You chose yourself over safety. And those were hard choices. Scary choices, costly choices, but you made them. And now you're living the result of those choices. And they're living the result of theirs. The difference is obvious, and that obviousness is what they can't forgive you for. Chapter 5. How your peace disturbs their chaos. There's something about your peace that fake people find deeply unsettling. Not the kind of peace that comes from everything going perfectly, but the kind that exists in the middle of imperfection. The kind that doesn't require ideal circumstances. The kind that you carry with you, regardless of external chaos. This peace isn't something you're trying to achieve. It's something you embody. And for people who've never experienced internal stability, your peace looks like magic, insanity, or a threat. You've reached a place where you don't need everything to be perfect to be okay. You can handle uncertainty without spiraling. You can face problems without catastrophizing. You can experience setbacks without defining yourself by them. You've developed an inner stability that doesn't depend on outer conditions. And this is completely foreign to fake people. They've spent their entire lives trying to control external circumstances because they have no internal anchor. They're like boats without anchors, forever at the mercy of whatever current happens to pass by. And you're anchored, deeply, immovably anchored. And that stability makes them feel the instability of their own existence. Think about how most people respond to problems. They panic, they dramatize, they recruit others into their anxiety. They need everyone around them to acknowledge how terrible the situation is. They require validation for their stress. They seek permission to be upset. And then there's you facing a similar problem with complete calm. Not because you don't care, not because you're in denial, but because you've developed the capacity to face reality without being overwhelmed by it. You can see what's wrong and still maintain your center. And this drives fake people absolutely crazy. Your peace challenges their entire approach to life. They've been operating under the assumption that anxiety is necessary, that worry is responsible, that stress is the price of caring. They've convinced themselves that their perpetual state of overwhelm is evidence of how much they care, how hard they work, how seriously they take things. And then you show up caring deeply but not drowning in it, working hard but not being destroyed by it, taking things seriously but not losing yourself in them. You're proving that their suffering is optional, and they don't want to believe that. Watch what happens when you remain calm in a situation where everyone else is freaking out. They don't thank you for bringing stability. They don't appreciate your groundedness. They attack you for it. You don't seem very concerned about this. I guess it's easy for you to be calm. Must be nice to not have to worry. They're implying that your peace is somehow inappropriate, irresponsible, or evidence that you don't understand the gravity of the situation. But you do understand. You simply refuse to add unnecessary suffering to necessary pain. You decline to dramatize what doesn't need drama. You choose presence over panic, and that choice feels like betrayal to people who need you to be as chaotic as they are. Fake people require collective anxiety. They need everyone around them to share their stress because it validates their approach to life. When everyone's anxious, it proves that anxiety is the appropriate response. When everyone's overwhelmed, it confirms that overwhelm is inevitable. When everyone's suffering, it demonstrates that suffering is necessary. Your peace breaks this consensus. It suggests that maybe anxiety isn't required. It implies that overwhelm is a choice. It demonstrates that suffering can be optional. And this possibility is terrifying to people who've built their entire identity on their struggles. You've probably noticed fake people trying to pull you into their chaos. They'll share their drama, expecting you to match their energy. They'll express their anxiety, waiting for you to mirror it. They'll create urgency where none exists, hoping you'll validate their panic. And when you don't, when you remain centered while they spiral, they feel abandoned. They feel like you're not supporting them. They interpret your peace as indifference, because in their world, caring means suffering together. Love means drowning with someone. Support means being equally overwhelmed. Your refusal to join them in their chaos feels like rejection. But here's what they don't understand. Your peace isn't indifference. It's actually the opposite. You care enough to stay grounded so you can actually help. You love enough to maintain clarity instead of adding to confusion. You support by being a rock, not by being another wave. You've learned that you can't rescue someone by drowning with them. You can't solve problems from the same level of consciousness that created them. You can't bring light into darkness by becoming dark yourself. So you maintain your peace not despite their chaos, but specifically because of it. Your peace also reveals something uncomfortable. Most of the chaos in their life is self-created. When you face a similar challenge with calm, it becomes obvious that the drama isn't in the situation itself. It's in how they're choosing to respond to it. When you handle a conflict with composure, it highlights that their explosions are choices. When you navigate uncertainty with trust, it exposes that their panic is optional. You're showing them, without saying a word, that they're making themselves suffer far more than circumstances require, and nobody wants to see that clearly. Think about the last time you watched fake people create a crisis out of something manageable. They took a minor issue and escalated it into a catastrophe. They involved unnecessary people, added dramatic elements, and turned a molehill into a mountain. And then they looked at you, drowning in self-created chaos, and expected you to validate that the mountain was always there. But you saw them build it. You watched them choose chaos over calm, drama over simplicity, complexity over straightforwardness. And your awareness of their role in their own suffering is something they can't forgive. Your peace also does something particularly threatening. It demonstrates emotional maturity. Fake people often pride themselves on being emotional. They cry loudly, love dramatically, and hurt spectacularly. They've convinced themselves that big emotions equal deep feelings. They believe that intense reactions prove intense caring. And then you come along with quiet depth, steady love, and profound feeling that doesn't need to be performed. You're showing them that emotional maturity isn't about feeling less. It's about feeling deeply without being controlled by those feelings. And that's a level of development they haven't reached yet. Here's what makes your peace truly disturbing to them. It's not circumstantial. You're not at peace because everything's going well. You're at peace because you've developed inner resources that aren't dependent on outer circumstances. You've cultivated a relationship with yourself that provides stability regardless of what's happening around you. You've learned to meet life from a place of groundedness instead of reactivity. This isn't something they can take from you. It's not something they can disturb. It exists independent of them. And that independence is what they find most unsettling of all. Fake people are addicted to external validation because they have no internal validation. They're dependent on circumstances going their way because they can't be okay when they don't. They need constant reassurance from others because they can't reassure themselves. They're at the mercy of life because they've never developed mastery over their own inner state. And you're demonstrating that all of this is unnecessary. You're proving that peace doesn't require perfect circumstances, that stability doesn't require controlling everything, that okayness doesn't require external validation. You're living proof that the inner work they've been avoiding is actually the only work that matters. And that's a truth they're not ready to face. Chapter 6. Why they can't understand your boundaries. Your boundaries confuse fake people. Not because boundaries are complicated, but because fake people don't have them. Or more accurately, they have boundaries that shift depending on who's asking, what they might get, and how it will make them look. Their boundaries aren't based on their values or needs. They're based on strategy. So when you set a boundary and actually maintain it, regardless of pressure or consequences, it's like you're speaking a foreign language they never learned. Think about what a boundary actually is. It's a statement of what you will and won't accept in your life. It's a line you draw based on your values, your well-being, and your authentic needs. It's not negotiable. It's not flexible based on who's asking. It's not designed to manipulate outcomes. It simply is. And when you say no, or this doesn't work for me, or I'm not available for that, you mean it. You're not testing anyone. You're not playing hard to get. You're not trying to control anyone else's behavior. You're simply stating your truth and maintaining it. Fake people don't operate this way. When they say no, it usually means convince me. When they set a boundary, they're often waiting to see if you'll push past it, because pushing past it proves how much you value them. When they express a limitation, they're typically testing whether you care enough to try harder. Their boundaries are negotiation tactics disguised as personal limits. So when they encounter your actual boundaries, they assume you're doing the same thing. They think you're playing the game they play, and they'll push, test, and challenge, expecting you to eventually give in. And then you don't give in. You maintain your boundary with calm consistency. You don't get angry when they push. You don't feel guilty when they test. You simply repeat your boundary and hold it firmly. And this breaks their brain, because in their experience, boundaries eventually crumble if you apply enough pressure. They've learned that no eventually becomes yes if you're persistent enough. They believe that limits are just suggestions waiting to be overcome. So your actual, real, maintained boundary is incomprehensible to them. You've probably experienced this. You set a clear boundary, and instead of respecting it, they ask why. They want an explanation. They need a justification. They require a reason that meets their standard of validity. Because if your reason isn't good enough, then your boundary isn't legitimate, and they don't have to respect it. This is manipulation disguised as curiosity. They're not trying to understand you. They're trying to find a weakness in your boundary that they can exploit. They're looking for an argument they can counter, a logic they can defeat, a reason they can invalidate. But here's what drives them crazy. You don't owe them an explanation. Your boundary exists because it exists. No is a complete sentence. This doesn't work for me requires no justification. I'm not available for that needs no defense. You're not seeking their approval for your boundary. You're not asking permission to have limits. You're simply stating a fact about yourself and what you will or won't accept. And this level of self-authority is foreign to people who need external validation for everything. Watch what happens when you maintain a boundary with someone who's used to bulldozing them. First, they're confused. They test it gently, expecting it to give. When it doesn't, they're surprised. They increase pressure, assuming you'll eventually fold. When you still don't, they get frustrated. They might try guilt. I can't believe you won't do this for me. They might try manipulation. I guess you don't really care. They might try anger. You're being unreasonable. They're cycling through every strategy they've ever used to get past someone's boundaries. And you're just standing there, unmoved, maintaining your line with calm clarity. This is when they often explode or retreat, because they finally realized your boundary is real. It's not a test. It's not a negotiation tactic. It's not going to change if they apply enough pressure, or say the right thing, or make you feel guilty enough. It simply is. And they have two choices, respect it or leave. Since respecting boundaries requires acknowledging that other people have the right to limits, and leaving means losing access to you, they're stuck. They're confronted with the reality that they can't control you. And for fake people, that realization is devastating. Your boundaries also highlight their lack of boundaries. When you easily say no, that doesn't work for me, they're reminded of all the times they said yes when they wanted to say no. When you prioritize your well-being without guilt, they're confronted with how often they sacrifice themselves for others' approval. When you maintain your limits under pressure, they see how quickly they collapse when tested. You're a mirror reflecting their lack of self-respect. And instead of inspiring them to develop their own boundaries, you make them feel inadequate for not having them. Fake people often interpret your boundaries as rejection. You're not available at a certain time, they feel rejected. You won't engage with certain topics, they feel excluded. You need space sometimes, they feel abandoned. This isn't because your boundaries are harsh. It's because they're so enmeshed with others, so desperate for connection, so afraid of being alone, that any limit feels like abandonment. They don't understand that boundaries create healthier relationships. They only see that boundaries create distance, and distance feels like death to people who have no relationship with themselves. Here's something crucial. Fake people will often try to make you feel guilty for your boundaries. You used to be so much more flexible. You've changed. You're not the person I thought you were. What they're really saying is you used to let me violate your boundaries, and now you don't, and I don't like it. They're mourning their former ability to manipulate you, control you, or ignore your needs. They're upset that you've developed self-respect. They're frustrated that you've stopped sacrificing yourself for their comfort. And they're framing this growth as loss, your strength as damage, your boundaries as flaws. You might also notice fake people testing your boundaries repeatedly. They'll respect it once, then try again a few weeks later, hoping you've forgotten or softened. They'll approach from different angles, looking for a weak spot. They'll use different people to make the same request, seeing if you'll hold the boundary with everyone. They're not respecting your no. They're just waiting for the right moment to get a yes. Because to them, boundaries aren't statements of unchangeable truth. They're obstacles to be overcome. And if they're patient enough, strategic enough, persistent enough, they believe they'll eventually get past yours. But they won't, because your boundaries aren't negotiable. They're not dependent on your mood, your guilt, or how many times someone asks. They're based on your values and your needs. They exist to protect your peace, your energy, and your authenticity. And you maintain them not to control others, but to honor yourself. This level of self-loyalty is something fake people have never experienced. They've spent their lives adjusting their boundaries based on who's asking and what might be gained. The idea of having standards that don't shift with circumstances is completely foreign to them. Your boundaries also force fake people to face consequences. When you say, if you continue this behavior, I'll distance myself, and you actually follow through, they're shocked. They're used to people making threats they don't keep, setting ultimatums they don't enforce, stating limits they don't maintain. They've learned that most people's consequences are empty. So when yours aren't, when you actually do what you said you'd do, they're caught off guard. And instead of taking responsibility for crossing your boundary, they blame you for enforcing it. They make you the bad guy for keeping your word. They paint you as harsh for simply doing what you said you'd do. This is the paradox of dealing with fake people. They want you to have boundaries just flexible enough to make them feel respected, but just porous enough for them to violate when it's convenient. They want you to seem principled, but not actually be principled. They want you to appear strong, but still be controllable. Your actual, real, maintained boundaries disrupt this balance. They prove you can't be controlled, manipulated, or guilt-tripped into abandoning yourself. And a person who can't be controlled is a person fake people don't know how to handle. Chapter 7. The games they play that you won't. Fake people are expert game players. They've spent years mastering the subtle art of manipulation, the delicate dance of social chess, the complex strategies of getting what they want while appearing innocent. They know how to read a room, identify vulnerabilities, and exploit them with surgical precision. They understand leverage, timing, and the power of plausible deniability. And then they meet you, someone who doesn't play games at all, and their entire skill set becomes useless. You need to understand what I mean by games. I'm not talking about fun competition or playful banter. I'm talking about manipulation disguised as interaction. I'm talking about indirect communication designed to maintain control. I'm talking about manufactured drama, strategic vulnerability, calculated spontaneity, and performative emotion. I'm talking about the exhausting theater of fake connection where every line is rehearsed and every gesture serves a purpose. Think about a common game, the guilt trip. Someone does something they know you don't want them to do, then frames their choice as a sacrifice they made for you. I stayed late at work to help you, even though I had plans. I changed my schedule for you, but I guess you don't appreciate it. They're manufacturing debt, creating an obligation where none exists, positioning themselves as martyrs to make you feel like you owe them. It's manipulation through manufactured sacrifice, or consider the game of triangulation. They don't address issues with you directly. Instead, they tell others about the problem, making sure it gets back to you. Or they involve third parties in conflicts that should be one-on-one. Or they play you against someone else, creating competition for their attention. They're generating drama, maintaining control, and avoiding direct communication all at once. It's a power move disguised as social dynamics. There's also the game of strategic withdrawal. They get upset, refuse to explain why, and make you work to figure out what's wrong. They create distance, wait for you to chase them, then use your pursuit as proof of your caring. They turn their emotional withdrawal into a test you didn't agree to take. It's the adult version of, if you really loved me, you'd know what's wrong. It's manipulation through mysterious silence. And you? You don't do any of this. When you're upset, you say so directly. When you have a conflict, you address it with the actual person involved. When you need something, you ask for it clearly. When you're making a sacrifice, you don't advertise it or create debt around it. You communicate plainly, interact honestly, and engage authentically. And this straightforward approach completely disrupts their games. Watch what happens when fake people try to play games with you. They drop hints, expecting you to pick them up and read between the lines. You take their words at face value. They create manufactured urgency, expecting you to panic and prioritize them. You assess the actual situation calmly and respond proportionally. They perform vulnerability, expecting you to rescue them. You offer support without taking responsibility for fixing them. They test your loyalty through ridiculous demands. You decline without guilt. Every single one of their moves fails because you're not playing the game they're playing. This frustrates them immensely. They've invested years developing these skills. They've learned how to manipulate with precision. They've perfected the art of indirect control, and you're making all of it useless simply by being direct. You're neutralizing their expertise with authenticity. You're defeating their strategy with straightforwardness. You're winning a game you're not even playing, and that's intolerable to them. You've probably noticed them escalating when their games don't work on you. They'll try more dramatic tactics. They'll manufacture bigger crises. They'll recruit more people into their drama. They're like gamblers who keep doubling down, convinced the next hand will finally win. But they won't win, because you can't manipulate someone who doesn't respond to manipulation. You can't guilt-trip someone who doesn't carry unnecessary guilt. You can't control someone through indirect means when they only respond to direct communication. Here's what makes your approach particularly effective. You're not trying to beat them at their games. You're not developing counter-strategies or learning their tactics. You're simply refusing to play. When someone tries to guilt you, you don't defend yourself or feel guilty. You just observe the attempt and move on. When someone triangulates, you don't engage with the drama. You address things directly with who you need to, or you don't engage at all. When someone withdraws strategically, you don't chase. You give them the space they're claiming to want. You're treating their games as if they're genuine, which ironically dismantles them. Think about the game of passive aggression. They make a joke that's actually an insult. They give a compliment that's actually criticism. They're just saying something hurtful, and they expect you to either laugh it off, proving you can take a joke, or get upset, proving you're too sensitive. Either way, they win, but you do neither. You call it out directly. That sounded like criticism. Was it? You name what's happening without getting emotional about it, and suddenly their deniability evaporates. They can't claim it was just a joke when you've calmly identified it as something else. You force them to either own their hostility or back down, and either way, the game ends. Or consider the game of moving goalposts. You do what they ask, and suddenly it's not enough. They wanted A, you delivered A, and now they needed A plus B plus C. They're creating a situation where you can never succeed, where you're always falling short, where you're perpetually trying to meet standards that keep changing. And you don't play, you deliver what was agreed upon. If they want more, that's a new request requiring new agreement. You don't chase their moving targets. You don't exhaust yourself trying to satisfy the insatiable. You simply do what you committed to and nothing more. Fake people often try to create confusion to maintain control. They'll say one thing and do another. They'll agree with you in private and contradict you in public. They'll support you today and undermine you tomorrow. They're keeping you off balance, making you unsure of where you stand, forcing you to constantly read the room and adjust. But you don't adjust. You stay consistent. You maintain your position regardless of their inconsistency. You refuse to be destabilized by their chaos, and your stability in the face of their confusion is deeply threatening. Here's something you need to recognize. When fake people can't manipulate you through games, they'll often try to make you feel like you're the one with the problem. You're too serious. You can't take a joke. You're overthinking things. You're too sensitive. They're trying to make your clarity seem like confusion, your directness seem like aggression, your immunity to manipulation seem like social incompetence. They're attempting to gaslight you into believing that playing games is normal and not playing them is abnormal. But you know better. You know that direct communication isn't aggressive, it's honest. You know that declining to participate in drama isn't being unsupportive, it's being healthy. You know that refusing to chase, rescue, or decode people isn't being cold, it's being self-respecting. You've learned that the games fake people play aren't sophisticated social skills. They're dysfunctional patterns dressed up as normal interaction, and you want no part of it. Your refusal to play games also reveals how much energy they waste on them. When you handle a situation with one direct conversation that they would have turned into weeks of drama, the contrast is stark. When you solve a problem with straightforward action that they would have complicated with politics and positioning, the efficiency is undeniable. When you maintain relationships through honest communication while they're juggling multiple narratives with different people, the simplicity is obvious. You're showing them that all their game playing is unnecessary, and that revelation threatens their entire approach to relationships. The beautiful thing about not playing games is that you can't lose. You can't be manipulated by tactics you don't engage with. You can't be controlled by strategies you don't participate in. You can't be defeated in competitions you're not entering. And you can't be exhausted by drama you refuse to join. You're existing in a completely different paradigm, operating from a completely different framework, living by completely different rules. And fake people who've built their entire social strategy on games don't know what to do with someone who simply opts out of the entire system. Chapter 8. The Mirror They Refuse to Look Into. You are a mirror, not the kind that simply reflects physical appearance. You're the kind that reflects truth. And when fake people look at you, they don't see you. They see themselves. They see the person they could have been. They see the choices they didn't make. They see the courage they lack. They see the authenticity they abandoned. And this reflection is so painful, so confronting, so undeniable that their only defense is to avoid you, attack you, or try to shatter you. Understanding this mirror effect is crucial, because once you recognize that their hostility isn't about you, it's about what you reflect back to them, everything changes. You stop taking their reactions personally. You stop questioning whether you're doing something wrong. You stop wondering if you should change. You simply understand that being authentic makes you a mirror, and most people don't like what they see when they look into mirrors that show truth. Think about what happens when someone who's been lying looks at someone who's been honest. The liar doesn't think I should be more honest. They think, that person is making me look bad. When someone who's been fake encounters someone who's been real, they don't think I should be more authentic. They think, that person is judging me. When someone who's compromised themselves meets someone who hasn't, they don't think I made wrong choices. They think that person has it easier than me. This is projection. They're projecting their own judgment of themselves onto you. They're feeling inadequate and deciding you must be making them feel that way. They're confronting their own regret and blaming you for triggering it. They're seeing their own shortcomings and accusing you of highlighting them. But you're not doing any of that. You're just existing. You're just being yourself. And that's enough to make them see everything they're not. You've probably noticed this when you make choices they wish they could make. When you quit a job that's making you miserable, and they've been staying in theirs for years despite hating it, you're not telling them they should quit. You're not suggesting their choice is wrong. You're simply making a different choice. But your choice is a mirror. It shows them that staying is optional. It reveals that their suffering is a choice. It exposes that fear is keeping them trapped, not circumstances. And instead of facing their fear, they attack your courage. Or consider when you end a relationship that isn't serving you. You're not telling anyone else to end their relationships. You're not judging people who stay in difficult situations. You're simply choosing differently. But your choice reflects a truth they don't want to see. That endurance isn't always noble. That staying isn't always strength. That leaving might be the braver option. So they call you selfish. They suggest you didn't try hard enough. They imply you're running away. They're defending their choice to stay by attacking your choice to leave. Because if leaving is legitimate, then their staying might be cowardice disguised as commitment. Watch what happens when you prioritize yourself in ways they haven't. You take time for self-care, set boundaries around your energy, say no to demands that drain you. They don't see self-love. They see selfishness. Why? because you're doing what they desperately need to do but won't. You're valuing yourself in ways they wish they valued themselves. You're treating yourself with respect they don't give themselves. And your self-care is a mirror showing them their self-neglect. Your boundaries reflect their lack of boundaries. Your no's highlight their inability to say no. This mirror effect is particularly intense around authenticity. When you speak your truth, you're not just expressing yourself. You're reflecting every time they swallowed their truth. When you show your real emotions, you're not just being vulnerable. You're reflecting every time they performed fake ones. When you admit what you don't know, you're not just being honest. You're reflecting every time they pretended to have answers. Your authenticity isn't an attack, but it feels like one because it illuminates their inauthenticity. Here's what makes this so threatening. They can't unsee what you reflect. Once they've encountered your authenticity, their fakeness becomes more conscious. Once they've witnessed your boundaries, their lack of boundaries becomes more obvious. Once they've seen your peace, their chaos becomes more unbearable. You've shown them something they can't unknow, and now they have three choices. Change. Live with the discomfort of knowing they could change but won't, or eliminate the mirror. Most choose option 3. Eliminating the mirror doesn't mean literal violence. It means distancing themselves, discrediting you, or trying to diminish what you represent. They can't destroy the truth you reflect, but they can try to destroy the messenger. They can avoid you so they don't have to see the reflection. They can badmouth you so others don't see it either. They can attack your character so your example becomes less credible. They're not really attacking you. They're attacking the uncomfortable truth you represent. You need to understand something crucial. Being a mirror isn't your fault or your choice. You're not trying to reflect anything. You're not intentionally showing people their shortcomings. You're simply existing authentically. And authenticity naturally reveals inauthenticity. Truth naturally exposes lies. Light naturally shows darkness. You're not being aggressive. You're being real. And being real in a fake world is automatically reflective. Think about the people who are most hostile toward you. What do they have in common? They're usually people who are deeply inauthentic. People who've compromised themselves significantly. People who've given up major parts of themselves for acceptance, approval, or advancement. People who've been performing for so long they've forgotten who they really are. These are the people who can't stand being around you, because every moment with you is a moment of confronting everything they're not. Contrast this with how authentic people respond to you. They're relieved, they're energized, they're inspired. They feel permission to be more themselves around you. They don't feel judged or threatened or uncomfortable. They feel seen and validated and encouraged. Why? Because your authenticity doesn't threaten theirs. It amplifies it. Your truth doesn't expose their lies because they're not lying. Your mirror reflects beauty they're already living, so they move closer instead of away. This is how you can distinguish between fake and authentic people in your life. Fake people will feel uncomfortable around you. They'll avoid deep conversations. They'll keep interactions surface level. They'll find reasons not to spend time with you. They'll subtly undermine you or compete with you. Meanwhile, authentic people will seek you out. They'll want deeper connection. They'll bring their real selves to interactions. They'll find reasons to spend more time with you. They'll support and celebrate you. The same mirror creates opposite reactions depending on what's being reflected. You might wonder if you should dim yourself to make others comfortable. Should you be less authentic so you're less of a mirror? Should you hide your truth so others don't have to face theirs? Absolutely not. First, it wouldn't work. Even a dimmed mirror still reflects. Even reduced authenticity still highlights inauthenticity. You'd be sacrificing yourself for nothing. Second, being a mirror isn't cruel. It's clarifying. You're not responsible for what people see when they look at you. You're responsible for being who you are. What they do with that reflection is their choice. Here's something powerful. Being a mirror is actually a gift, even when it's not received as one. You're offering people an opportunity to see themselves clearly. You're providing them a chance to recognize their compromises. You're giving them a moment to choose differently. Most won't take it. Most will turn away. But some will look into the mirror, see what needs to change, and make different choices. And those few make being a mirror worth all the hostility from the many who can't handle the reflection. Being a mirror also protects you, because once you understand this dynamic, you stop internalizing their hostility. When someone attacks your authenticity, you recognize it as their discomfort with their inauthenticity. When someone questions your choices, you see it as their questioning of their own choices. When someone tries to diminish your success, you understand it as their struggle with their lack of success. Their reactions become information about them, not judgments about you. And this understanding is incredibly freeing. You'll start noticing patterns. The people who most aggressively criticize your boundaries are usually people with no boundaries. The people who most vehemently question your choices are usually people regretting their own. The people who most desperately try to prove you're wrong are usually people afraid they might be wrong. The people who most consistently try to make you doubt yourself are usually people drowning in self-doubt. They're projecting their internal reality onto you, and recognizing projection for what it is makes you immune to it. But here's where it gets interesting. You can be a mirror with compassion. You can reflect truth without being harsh. You can show people their compromises without shaming them for it. You can be authentic without being arrogant. You can hold the mirror up without forcing people to look into it. This isn't about being soft or accommodating or fake. It's about being authentic with kindness, being real with empathy, being honest with love. This means you don't rub your authenticity in anyone's face. You don't use your truth as a weapon. You don't highlight others' fakeness while celebrating your realness. You simply exist in your authenticity and let that be enough. You let the mirror do its work naturally without adding commentary. You let the reflection speak for itself without adding narration. You trust that truth is powerful enough without you trying to make it more powerful. It also means you have compassion for people who can't look into the mirror. You understand that seeing yourself clearly is terrifying when you don't like what you see. You recognize that confronting years of compromises is overwhelming. You acknowledge that admitting you've been living inauthentically requires courage most people don't have. You don't judge them for turning away. You just don't dim your mirror to make their avoidance easier. Being a mirror isn't always comfortable for you either. It can be lonely. It can feel isolating. It can make you wonder if being authentic is worth all the hostility it generates. But here's what you need to remember. The discomfort of being a mirror is nothing compared to the agony of being fake. The loneliness of authenticity is preferable to the crowded emptiness of inauthenticity. The isolation of truth is better than the false connection of lies. You chose the harder path, but it's also the path that leads somewhere real. The mirror you are becomes clearer and more powerful the longer you remain authentic. As you continue being yourself, as you keep making choices based on your truth, as you maintain your boundaries and your peace and your honesty, your reflective power intensifies. You become an even clearer mirror. And this means the reactions to you will intensify too. Fake people will become more uncomfortable. Their hostility might increase. Their avoidance might become more obvious. But authentic people will also become more attracted to you. Your tribe will find you more easily. Real connections will form more quickly. Think of yourself as a tuning fork. You're vibrating at the frequency of authenticity. And when you encounter other people, they either resonate with your frequency or they don't. Fake people don't resonate. They experience dissonance. It's uncomfortable for them to be around your frequency because it highlights how out of tune they are. But authentic people resonate beautifully. They experience harmony. It's energizing for them to be around your frequency because it confirms and amplifies their own. You are the mirror they don't want to look into. Not because you're doing anything wrong, not because you're being cruel or judgmental or harsh, but simply because you're being real in a world where they've chosen to be fake. And real reflects fake in ways that are undeniable and uncomfortable. Your job isn't to stop being a mirror. Your job is to be the clearest, truest, most authentic mirror you can be. And let people choose whether they'll look into it or turn away. Their choice, their life, their consequence. You just keep reflecting truth. Chapter 9. Why your success feels like their failure. There's something about your success that fake people take personally. Your wins feel like their losses. Your achievements feel like their inadequacy on display. Your growth feels like proof of their stagnation. This isn't rational. Your success doesn't diminish them. Your achievements don't take anything away from them. Your growth doesn't prevent theirs. But to fake people, life is a zero-sum game. They believe there's only so much success to go around. And if you're winning, they must be losing. You need to understand the scarcity mindset that drives this reaction. Fake people believe there's not enough success, not enough recognition, not enough value, not enough love, not enough worth. So they're constantly competing for scarce resources. They're always positioning themselves relative to others. They're perpetually comparing and calculating where they rank. And when you succeed, it feels like you've taken something that could have been theirs. It feels like you've stolen their share of the limited pie. Think about the last time you accomplished something significant. You were probably excited to share it with people you thought cared about you. And some of those people responded with joy and celebration. But others gave you that tight smile, that forced congratulations, that enthusiasm that doesn't reach their eyes, that immediate pivot to talking about themselves or finding a flaw in your success. They can't genuinely celebrate you because your success makes them feel like failures. and they resent you for making them feel that way. This is particularly intense when you succeed by being authentic, because that's not how they think success works. They believe success requires compromise, requires playing politics, requires wearing masks, requires sacrificing authenticity. They've convinced themselves that all their fakeness is necessary to get ahead, and then you get ahead by being real. You succeed by being yourself. You win by refusing to play their games. And this doesn't inspire them to try your approach. It makes them angry that their approach might be wrong. You've probably noticed fake people trying to minimize your successes. Anyone could have done that. You just got lucky. It's different for you. Wait until the real challenges come. They're constantly finding ways to make your achievements seem less significant, less valid, less impressive. Because if your success counts, their lack of success becomes a choice rather than a circumstance. If your achievement matters, their excuses start to ring hollow. If your win is legitimate, they have to face that they could be winning too if they made different choices. Watch what happens when you succeed at something they said was impossible. When you set a boundary and your relationships improved instead of falling apart. When you spoke your truth and were respected instead of rejected. When you chose authenticity and succeeded instead of failed. They don't celebrate the revelation that maybe they were wrong. They double down. They find reasons why your situation was unique. They identify factors you had that they don't. They maintain their worldview by making you the exception that proves their rule. Here's what makes your success particularly threatening. You make it look easy. Not because it was easy, but because you're not dramatizing the difficulty. You're not performing your struggle. You're not advertising your suffering. You face challenges, you handle them, you move on. You don't create theater around your obstacles. You don't recruit audiences for your hardships. You simply do what needs to be done and keep going. And to fake people who perform every struggle for maximum sympathy and attention, your quiet competence is infuriating. Think about how fake people handle challenges. They announce them widely. They update everyone constantly on their suffering. They recruit supporters for their battles. They create narratives where they're the heroes overcoming impossible odds. They make sure everyone knows how hard they're working, how much they're sacrificing, how difficult everything is. And then there's you, facing similar or greater challenges with minimal announcement. You're handling your business without the performance. You're succeeding without the spectacle. And this makes their drama look unnecessary and exhausting. Your success also highlights their excuses. They've been saying they can't do X because of Y. They can't be authentic because they'll lose their job. They can't set boundaries because people will leave. They can't speak their truth because they'll be rejected. And then you do X despite why you're authentic and your career thrives. You set boundaries and your relationships deepen. You speak truth and you're respected. Every excuse they've been using is invalidated by your example, and they hate you for it. You've probably experienced them trying to find the real reason for your success. They must have connections. They probably had help we don't know about. I bet it's not as good as it seems. They're looking for the hidden advantage, the secret blessing, the unfair edge that explains your success without threatening their worldview. Because if your success is just the result of hard work, good choices, and authenticity, then theirs could be too. And that possibility is too uncomfortable to accept. Here's something crucial to understand. Their reaction to your success says nothing about you and everything about them. Your achievements don't make anyone feel inadequate. Their feelings of inadequacy make your achievements feel threatening. Your wins don't diminish anyone. Their lack of self-worth makes them feel diminished by your wins. Your growth doesn't hold anyone back. Their refusal to grow makes your growth look like abandonment. This is their issue, their insecurity, their choice, not your responsibility. But fake people will try to make it your responsibility. They'll suggest you're being insensitive by celebrating your success around them. They'll imply you're bragging when you're simply sharing. They'll claim you're making them feel bad when you're just existing in your achievement. They want you to dim your light so they feel less dark. They want you to hide your wins so they feel less like losers. They want you to pretend you're struggling so they feel less alone in their struggle. And you refuse. Not to hurt them, but because you know that shrinking yourself doesn't help anyone. Think about what they're really asking when they want you to downplay your success. They're asking you to participate in collective mediocrity. They're requesting that you pretend growth isn't possible so they don't have to attempt it. They're demanding that you fake struggle you're not experiencing so they feel validated in their real struggle. They're insisting that you make yourself smaller so they can avoid making themselves bigger. And all of this is wrapped in the language of being sensitive or being humble or being a team player. But real humility isn't hiding your light. It's acknowledging your light without arrogance. Real sensitivity isn't pretending you're not succeeding. It's succeeding without rubbing it in anyone's face. Real team play isn't dimming yourself. It's shining while encouraging others to shine too. You're not being harsh by being successful. You're not being cruel by being authentic. You're not being insensitive by growing. You're simply refusing to participate in false modesty designed to protect fake people from facing their own choices. Your success is also threatening because it's sustainable. You're not burning out. You're not destroying yourself. You're not sacrificing your health, your relationships, or your peace. You're succeeding while being whole, while being balanced, while being authentic. And this proves that success doesn't require the kind of self-destruction they've been engaged in. It demonstrates that you can achieve without destroying yourself. It shows that the grind mentality they've bought into isn't the only path. And this revelation threatens the foundation of how they've been living. Watch what happens as you continue succeeding over time. Fake people keep waiting for you to fail. They're convinced that authenticity can't sustain success. They believe that eventually you'll have to compromise. Eventually you'll have to play games. Eventually you'll have to become like them. And when you don't, when you keep succeeding year after year by being yourself, their cognitive dissonance becomes unbearable. They can no longer rationalize your success as luck or timing or circumstances. They have to face that maybe, just maybe, your approach works better than theirs. And that realization is the most threatening thing of all. Conclusion. Now you understand your power. You've made it to the end. And if you're still listening, it's because something in this resonated. It's because you've lived these experiences. You've felt the hostility of fake people. You've wondered if you were doing something wrong. You've questioned whether being authentic was worth the price. You've considered whether you should go back to playing the games, wearing the mask, being the person others wanted you to be. And now you know. Now you understand. Their inability to handle you isn't your problem. It's their truth reflected back at them. Let's be clear about what we've discovered. Fake people can't stand you because you're everything they're afraid to be. You're honest in a world that rewards lies. You're authentic in systems designed for performance. You're direct in cultures built on manipulation. You're confident without needing validation. You're peaceful without perfect circumstances. You have boundaries that don't shift. You refuse to play games that waste energy. You succeed without destroying yourself. And every single one of these qualities is a mirror they don't want to look into. You now understand that their hostility toward you has nothing to do with anything you're doing wrong and everything to do with what they're not doing right. When they criticize your honesty, they're really confronting their dishonesty. When they attack your confidence, they're really facing their insecurity. When they're disturbed by your peace, they're really feeling their chaos. When they can't understand your boundaries, they're really acknowledging their lack of self-respect. When they won't play your games, they're really seeing how much energy they waste. When they resent your success, they're really regretting their choices. This understanding is your liberation, because once you truly grasp that their reaction is about them, you stop taking it personally. You stop questioning yourself when they're uncomfortable. You stop dimming your light when they feel dark. You stop shrinking when they feel small. You stop apologizing for being who you are. You stop wondering if you should go back to being who you're not. You simply exist in your authenticity and let them deal with their discomfort in whatever way they choose. But here's where this gets really important. Understanding why they can't stand you isn't about judging them. It's not about feeling superior or dismissing their struggle. It's about protecting your peace and maintaining your authenticity despite their reactions. Fake people are often fake because they're wounded. They're wearing masks because they learned early that who they are isn't safe. They're playing games because direct communication got them hurt. They're insecure because someone taught them they weren't enough. Their fakeness is survival strategy, not moral failing. You can have compassion for their journey while refusing to participate in their dysfunction. You can understand why they're threatened while maintaining your boundaries. You can recognize their pain while declining to make it your responsibility. You can see their humanity while not allowing them to dim yours. Compassion doesn't require sacrifice. Understanding doesn't demand that you shrink. Empathy doesn't mean you have to fix them or save them or convince them or change yourself to make them comfortable. Here's what you need to remember moving forward. Some people will never be comfortable with your authenticity. No matter how kind you are, no matter how gentle your honesty, no matter how considerately you set boundaries, no matter how quietly you succeed, your very existence challenges their entire way of being. And rather than being inspired to change, they'll be motivated to either avoid you or undermine you. This isn't personal. This isn't something you can fix. This is simply the reality of being authentic in a world full of facades. Your job isn't to convince them that authenticity is better. Your job isn't to help them see the light. Your job isn't to sacrifice your truth to make them comfortable. Your job is to keep being yourself regardless of their reaction, to keep speaking honestly even when it creates discomfort, to keep maintaining boundaries even when it leads to distance, to keep succeeding even when it highlights their stagnation, to keep growing even when it feels like leaving them behind. Because you're not responsible for their growth. You're only responsible for your own. You're going to lose people on this journey. Friends who can't handle your evolution. Family members who preferred the version of you that didn't challenge them. Colleagues who feel threatened by your clarity. Partners who need you to be smaller so they can feel bigger. And every single loss, while painful, is actually a clearing. You're making room for people who can handle your authenticity. You're creating space for relationships based on truth rather than performance. You're building a life where you don't have to pretend, perform, or please. The people you lose were never really with you anyway. They were with the version of you that made them comfortable. They loved the you that played small, stayed quiet, didn't challenge, didn't grow, didn't shine too bright. That wasn't love. That was codependency. That wasn't friendship. That was mutual enabling. That wasn't support. That was collective stagnation. And releasing people who can't handle your authenticity isn't losing anything real. It's shedding what was always false. The right people will find you. The people who are also on this journey of authenticity. The people who are also tired of games. The people who also value truth over comfort. The people who celebrate your boundaries instead of testing them. The people who are inspired by your success instead of threatened. The people who match your peace instead of disturbing it. The people who see your confidence and feel encouraged, not diminished. These people exist, and they're looking for you just like you're looking for them. But you have to be willing to stand alone while you find them. You have to be willing to be misunderstood by many, to be truly understood by a few. You have to be willing to be disliked by people who don't know you, to be genuinely loved by people who do. You have to be willing to lose the crowd to find your people. This is the price of authenticity, and it's a price you're already paying. The only question is whether you're paying it with resentment or with understanding. Let's talk about what this means practically. It means you stop explaining yourself to people who are determined to misunderstand you. It means you stop defending your choices to people who've already decided you're wrong. It means you stop trying to prove your authenticity to people who benefit from doubting it. It means you stop seeking approval from people who've decided to withhold it. You simply live your life, make your choices, maintain your boundaries, and let your results speak for themselves. It means you stop feeling guilty when fake people are uncomfortable around you. Their discomfort is information about them, not instruction for you. It's telling you about their journey, not prescribing yours. It's revealing their limitations, not defining your requirements. You can acknowledge their discomfort without taking responsibility for it. You can notice their reaction without modifying your action. You can see their struggle without making it your problem. It means you start recognizing the attempts to manipulate you for what they are. When someone guilt trips you, you see the manipulation instead of feeling the guilt. When someone tests your boundaries, you reinforce them instead of questioning them. When someone tries to make you responsible for their feelings, you return that responsibility to them. When someone tries to pull you into their chaos, you maintain your peace. You become fluent in the language of manipulation, which means you're no longer susceptible to it. It means you embrace being the villain in stories where you're actually the hero. Fake people will tell others about how difficult you are, how unreasonable you are, how you've changed, how you're not the person you used to be. And they're right about one thing. You have changed. You've stopped accepting what doesn't serve you. You've stopped pretending to be someone you're not. You've stopped playing games that drain you. You've stopped dimming yourself to make others comfortable. And in their story, this makes you the villain. In your story, this makes you free. It means you understand that being authentic isn't about being perfect. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to sometimes be unclear, sometimes be too blunt, sometimes misjudge situations. Authenticity isn't flawless execution. It's genuine effort. It's real mistakes and real growth. It's messy and imperfect and constantly evolving. And that's okay. Because you're not trying to be perfect. You're trying to be real. And real is always going to be better than fake, even when it's flawed. It means you recognize that your authenticity is your responsibility, but not your weapon. You're not using truth as a hammer. You're not wielding honesty as a sword. You're not deploying boundaries as punishment. You're simply existing in integrity and allowing others to respond however they respond. Your authenticity isn't designed to hurt anyone, but it's also not designed to protect anyone from themselves. It simply is, and how people react to it is their choice. It means you start seeing the resistance you face as confirmation, not correction. When fake people react negatively to your authenticity, it's not a sign you should change. It's evidence you're onto something real. It's proof you're disrupting a system that needed disrupting. It's confirmation you're choosing truth in a world built on lies. The resistance isn't telling you to go back. It's telling you you're going in the right direction. Keep going. It means you find peace in being misunderstood. Not everyone will get you. Not everyone will appreciate your approach. Not everyone will understand your choices. And that's fine. You're not living for everyone's understanding. You're living for your own peace. You're not making choices for universal approval. You're making choices for personal integrity. You're not existing for collective comfort. You're existing for authentic expression. And the right people will understand. The wrong people were never meant to. It means you stop waiting for permission to be yourself. You're not waiting for the world to become safe enough for your authenticity. You're not waiting for people to be mature enough to handle your honesty. You're not waiting for circumstances to be perfect enough for your boundaries. You're being authentic now in this imperfect world with these imperfect people in these imperfect circumstances. Because waiting for perfect conditions means waiting forever. And you've already wasted enough time being someone you're not. It means you recognize your power. You have the power to disrupt fake systems simply by being real. You have the power to threaten unhealthy dynamics simply by being healthy. You have the power to challenge collective lies simply by speaking truth. You have the power to expose masks simply by removing yours. This power isn't aggressive. It's not attacking anyone. It's simply the natural consequence of authenticity in a world full of fakeness. And it's a power fake people can never take from you. Here's the final truth. Fake people can't stand authentic ones because authentic people have something fake people desperately want but are terrified to pursue. freedom, peace, integrity, wholeness, real connection, genuine confidence, true success. All of it exists on the other side of the mask they're wearing. All of it requires the courage they haven't found yet. All of it demands the authenticity they're afraid to embrace. And you're living proof that it's possible. You're walking evidence that the leap is worth taking. You're breathing testimony that being real beats being fake every single time. They can't stand you because you're free and they're imprisoned. You're at peace and they're at war with themselves. You're whole and they're fragmented. You're real and they're performing. You're growing and they're stuck. You're living and they're surviving. And every single day that you continue being authentic, you remind them of what they could be if they were brave enough. That reminder is the greatest gift you could give them, even though they experience it as the greatest threat. So keep being you. Keep speaking your truth. Keep maintaining your boundaries. Keep refusing to play games. Keep succeeding in your own way. Keep growing at your own pace. Keep shining your own light. Not to prove anything to anyone. Not to show fake people what they're missing, but simply because that's who you are. That's what you've chosen. That's the path you're walking, and their inability to handle it is no longer your concern. You understand now. Fake people can't stand authentic ones, but authentic people don't need fake people to stand them. They don't need approval. They don't need validation. They don't need acceptance from people living in masks. They have something far more valuable. They have themselves. They have their truth. They have their integrity. They have their peace. They have their freedom. And no fake person can ever take that away. Now you understand your power. Use it wisely. Use it kindly. But most importantly, never stop using it. The world needs your authenticity more than it needs your performance. People need your truth more than they need your politeness. Life needs your real more than it needs your fake. And you need to be yourself more than you need to be liked. You're dangerous now, not because you're going to hurt anyone, but because you can't be controlled. You can't be manipulated. You can't be diminished. You can't be made to shrink. You can't be convinced to go back to being someone you're not. And that's the most dangerous thing in the world to people who depend on others being controllable. Let them fear you. Let them avoid you. Let them talk about you. Let them resent you. Let them resent you. While they're busy reacting to your authenticity, you're busy living, and that's the ultimate victory. This is your life, your one precious life. Don't waste another day of it being someone you're not to make fake people comfortable. Don't sacrifice another moment of authenticity for acceptance that was never real anyway. Don't trade your peace for their approval. Don't exchange your truth for their tolerance. Don't give up your freedom for their comfort. Be you, unapologetically, consistently, courageously you, and let the fake people deal with it however they need to. That's their journey. Yours is to keep being authentic no matter who can't stand it, and that's exactly what you're going to do. Now go be dangerous. Go be authentic. Go be you